because for them it is there. And the fact that all of us also are jumping in the river, and all of us are standing there watching those nude, so-called nude Nagas. I mean, it's a kind of a kind of, I would say, irritating factor for them, because they have been coming to these rivers since ages and ages. So I wanted to kind of do a story on them. And the second thing which I suddenly got it. I mean, I had not planned for it, but suddenly I got a very, very interesting documentary story that was about Kinnar Akhada. I don't know whether you know about it. Kinnar means it's a, I would say, a misnomer, although a kind of a wrong word used for the eunuchs. Eunuchs, or in Hindi it is called hijra. Now, eunuchs are a huge community all over the world. In India, we do give a certain kind of a, we used to give a certain kind of respect to them. No more, because down the years, down the, I would say, after the British rule, they had actually banned them from entering various places, and after that in the medieval age also. But during our ancient times, in the scriptures, these eunuchs were called Vrihannala, and they were very respected. They were really given a certain kind of a position, which down the years have completely dwindled. Now, when I saw that they have, opened their akhada. Akhada means there are 13 akhadas in our country, which are religious sects. Now, all these 13 akhadas are under the main Shankaracharya. And then when all these kumbhs happen, all these akhadas, they go there and they have their stalls and they do the dip, the holy dip. And the entire 1 month, they do various types of religious activities. Now, it's so strange. So the eunuchs have their own akhada. Nobody had probably ever heard of it. I mean, they actually have started their own religious community. They launched it, I think, last year sometime. And all the people who are in their community, who are religiously inclined or who are of religious faith, nobody knows whether they are all Hindus. Nobody knows that they are all Hindus, because ideally Hindus should have their akhadas. Ideally, Hindus should go and have a dip in the river. So when these eunuchs they have opened their launched their akhada, which means even Muslims must be there. I mean, who knows which eunuch is a Muslim, or which eunuch is a tribal, or which eunuch is a Christian or anything. So now imagine having this amazing religious akhada of eunuchs who are launching this kind of a I would say launching this kind of a campaign that please accept me. They are, this LGBT community has been crying hoarse that please accept us in all manner. Don't ridicule us. The film industry ridicules them. The news industry creates stories out of them. Television industry avoids them. You will never find a story on a eunuch ever on any television channel anywhere in the world. So they want to say that we are not lepers. We are not just. We are humans. Don't treat us like as if we are nothing. So they have, I thought I would make a documentary on that. I talked to a lot of eunuchs, transgenders. I talked to Lakshmi, who was leading it. Lakshmi is the iconic transgender LGBT community leader. I talked to her, and I realized that they're only and only wanting acceptance and love. So I thought maybe after making this film, I want to take this film to the government. I want to present this film to the BJP. I want to tell them that you have a Hinduistic Hindutva philosophy. Look, here all the eunuchs are participating in a Hindu festival. So now, what more do you want? Accept them, give them all their rights. So in my own way, what I was trying to say is, in my own way, I want to bring even a minuscule change in the society, in a certain section of people through my films. Whether I'm working in a channel or whether I'm writing for any channel, doesn't matter. By the way, I keep making films. I make it from my own funds also. I do get films from clients and other people also. And that is the kind of thing which I feel that I can give to the society. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Ekta Kapoor. I'll take you a little background about what I do right now. Right now, I'm editor of fashion101.in. It's a website. Yeah. Okay, I'll keep this closer. I'm editing a website called fashion101.in. It's India's only multilingual fashion news website. It's part of the Dainik Bhaskar Group, which is one of India's largest media houses. Uh, I have an independent office in Delhi, though the head office of Dainik Bhaskar is in Bhopal. Um, I have a team of about 15 people. We write in 3 languages, and at the moment we have about close to 2 million readers who give us, put together, we get about 8 to 10 million hits in a month. This website is about a year old. I'm giving you this background to share with you my journey, and I think for an Indian woman, her professional journey is never separate from her personal journey. And maybe that's true for women around the world as well. And I think when we achieve something in our professions, we cannot disconnect it from our personal lives and from our personal struggles or our personal challenges that we've faced along the way. And I'm telling you that I've reached this point which I would like to see as a very high point in any woman's career, where I'm responsible for a complete project and a complete division in a company, which for me is not a small thing. And I'll tell you why. Because I come from a background where women were not expected to work. And it was not even easy for a woman to step out of home and get a job. That itself was a very big deal. I was brought up in Dubai, where Sonia now lives. And I was brought up to a conservative Punjabi family, relatively affluent. And when I finished my schooling, I was expected to come and live with my grandparents in India and do my BA. And again, the expectation is that as soon as the BA is done, we will be married. And, there was no future. There was an empty space where the future is supposed to be. And it was always an expectation that, you're a housewife and you have kids, and that's how it is. And that's how it was. I was married at 20. I was a mother of two by 24. I was a homemaker. I was a homemaker till I was 28. And at the age of 28, something started happening, and I decided, I was always a writer in my childhood, and I started writing poetry. And my poetry was seen on, by the time the internet had arrived, and my poetry was seen on a few websites. And I was given, just through, I would say, a quirk of fate or an act of God, somebody asked me to edit some books of poetry. And I used to do this sitting at home. My family at that point did not like it because women were not supposed to work. And why would you need to work? You're married to a wealthy man, you drive a Mercedes, why do you need to work? So there was always this battle, but because I was working at home, it wasn't so bad. Out of the blue, I get a job offer, a proper job in a proper office where I have to go somewhere and come back in the evening. And I think as a social, the unit of the family just fell apart. And there was a lot of opposition. The opposition was so bad that the marriage fell apart. There was a lot of violence. And ultimately, I think there was something in me, the will to survive, the will to work, the will to go out. It sounds really funny to say this, but the act of sitting on a computer and having a desk to myself would give me such an amazing sense of independence and identity that I could not let go of this. It was something not given to me by my father or my husband. This is something only I can do and only I can give the world, even if it is editing a few sections of a book. I used to work in a publishing house. And well, my marriage fell apart. I took my little girls and we left. I started a new life with nothing but, you know, my books and their uniforms. I went from a wealthy housewife to a single mother with a very little income. But, again, act of God, I got a job in the media. I got my first media job in a fashion magazine. Um, it was a life of struggle over the next 10 years, bringing up two girls, working in the media. We have late hours, the stresses of going to press. My parents, of course, supported me a lot. My mother came back. She started living in India. My father also retired and came back because they felt that I needed them. So they came back about 8 years ago. And but somehow I think while my personal life was sort of falling apart, my professional life was really coming together. And I think that the kind of energy and the power I drew from my personal challenges, perhaps, made me a better professional. And I was able to take on a lot of work, and it was very easy for me. I mean, I've been in life and death situations, so a little employee problem at work is not a problem. Or, if there's an error in the magazine, it's all right, it's not life and death. So I think because of that, my professional life has been, touch wood, by the grace of God, it's just been a growth. I've been in the profession for about 11, 12 years now. And I have achieved a lot more than other people would have achieved with my kind of experience. And, just a homemaker before that for like 8, 9 years. And people ask me, the mothers make a sacrifice to leave their jobs, to be home with their kids. I said, I made a sacrifice to leave home and go out and work. So for me, it was the other way around. Because I felt that as a fulfilled woman, even if I see my kids for 2 days, 2 hours in a day, I'm a better mother than being at home and being a complete wreck and being a depressed person who just wants to commit suicide. So I think I'm a better example for my kids now versus I would have been as a homemaker. And I think they look up to me. And, of course, now we talk a lot, and they're grown up, they're late teens now. One of them is in college. And I think, and they also look back and they say, you made the right decision, and it's been hard, but it's been correct. And along the way, I found a wonderful partner, and we're married now. We've been married for 3 years now. And he has been the kind of a man who, you know, it's like if my first husband would always ask me, why do you need to do this? Why do you need to do this? And he's the kind of man who says, why not? Yeah, go ahead. I mean, it's not even a question that I shouldn't be at the top of everything I do. So that's what I like to say, that for a woman, I think your profession and your personal is usually very interlinked. And that has been my journey, and a lot of people to thank along the way. But I think most of all, it's probably my purpose, which is why now I'm very passionate about helping young women. A lot of women come to me, especially in these kind of situations, in bad marriages or stuck in a bad place. My team, I have a very young team, young women. One of them is a Hindu from a very old-fashioned, rural Hindu, high caste Hindu family. She's in love with a Muslim. And, so it's a tough battle ahead for her, the next few years. How does she convince her family? And in fact, she comes from the part of India where honor killings are very rampant. So, so I try to do a little bit in my own way to encourage these women to think about not limiting yourselves, and at the same time, understanding that we live in a macrocosm that's connected to every cell in your body. So every time everything in you changes, your society changes. The way people think around you changes, and then it moves further. It's like a ripple. And I just want to end with a quote. Being realistic is the easiest path to mediocrity. That's a quote by the actor Will Smith. And I find that I think I've never been realistic, and I think that's good. So thank you.
Um, Thank you for coming. It's not exactly the earliest session to be at, it's the morning session. We all kind of wake up now. I completely relate with the ladies. It takes resilience to fly. You cannot find your wings without that resilience, even in flight. Like her, I was